get information that would help you on your pathway to Canada. So tonight we're talking about something on with immigration. It's not a topic that is quite strange or new, but just like the nature of immigration is, you always get updated because the information never remains the same. So there's nothing like I knew about it before. What else are they going to say? Nothing like that. And it's better when somebody who has gone the path holds your hands and brings you up to date with the current information. And here you are, we have a person who has gone through the path and ready to um, share with us about what it takes. So while we just wait for a brief minute, maybe one or two, to make sure we have more people joining, we get set. So please, as you are here, please kindly share the message, the information with your contacts, people who you feel be interested. The Zoom, the YouTube link has been shared on the chat. The Zoom link is also on the chat. Please give this webinar the noise it requires while we are on. And we're waiting for just a minute to get on. All right. Yeah, we are good to go. And I welcome you once again to tonight's edition of the YP-LEF program. And I'm sure you're going to have a very interesting time. Please pay attention, write down, take notes, put down your questions. You can also interact with the chat box while we go on with the events tonight. We have a very distinguished person who would take us through the session. He's a financial advisor, somebody who has experienced the immigration pathway to Canada. And I believe she's already on the call to share with us my words of personal experience, first-hand experience on the pathways to immigration in Canada. Can we have a clapping and emojis, thumbs up to welcome on stage Ruth Olashukwu. Madam Ruth Olashukwu, I believe you are here already. You can have the floor. Let's welcome her with her emojis and other appreciation.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to welcome everyone to this conversation this evening. It would have been lovely to see our faces, so that way, I'm sure I'm not just speaking to names. I'm sure I'm speaking to real individuals. So I welcome as many of you who are able to come on camera to please come on camera, so that way I can have a live feedback. I would not be looking in the chat while the conversation is going on. So I would want us to maybe keep our questions till after the entire conversation. You can take a note, you can jot down questions, and then once I'm done with whatever I want to say, then we can come to the questions after that. Again, I welcome you to come on camera. That's going to give me live feedback, and I'm going to really appreciate that. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with us, the YP-LEF team. Just a bit about me. My name is Ruth, as you've been told. I live in Canada. I came to Canada, yeah, I think it's 7 years ago now, with my husband, and we have two kids, a girl and a boy, and we live in Alberta, Calgary. Came to Canada, before I came into Canada, I used to work as a lecturer back in Nigeria. And then we got the opportunity to come in to Canada and we migrated, and it's been great. After coming in here, I decided to go to school. I went to school to study to become an immigration consultant. So currently, I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. And in this practice, I've been able to assist other people who have that dream of coming to Canada temporarily, permanently, as the case may be, to relocate to Canada. I also work as a licensed financial advisor. So those are the things I do. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get into the conversation for today. I believe my screen is visible. Okay. So I was told to speak on the title, Holistic Global Guide to Canadian Immigration Pathway, and then trying to understand what your options are, building your profile, and choosing the right strategy. Because coming to Canada, I would say is open to all, but at the end of the day, not everyone can make it in because it depends on how well you're able to navigate the complex Canadian immigration landscape and how well you're able to use the right strategies to afford you whatever opportunities you're looking for in Canada. So largely, Canada is still welcoming immigrants, but unfortunately, the strategy has changed. I would say it was a lot easier while I was trying to come into Canada. I think it was easier before I tried to come into Canada, but it's become a bit more difficult, a bit more complex. And so it requires careful planning, it requires the right strategy. So usually Canada would roll out 3 years plan regarding how they intend to bring people in. So currently we have a plan for 2026, 27, and 29. So what I encourage people to do, those who are trying to come into Canada, and I would say everything I'm going to be talking about today is available on the Government of Canada website, okay? Immigration Canada website. So you can always go in there to verify. I did intend to put in references to these slides, but I don't think I did that. But just to say, you can go in there to verify everything I'm saying and to even read a lot more to understand most of these things. So based on the information we have on the Government of Canada website, currently we have plans for 2026 to 2029, 2028. Canada is still prioritizing those who want to come in through the permanent resident route. So there are ways you can come into Canada. If you want to come in as a temporary resident or you want to come in as a permanent resident. Because of the people I'm speaking with today, I understand most of you are professionals. So I believe most of you are looking to come in permanently to Canada. And you can see from my slides here, I'll just try to bring up so that I can do some annotation. So you can see that we have an upward trend for the economic immigration routes. And then we have a somewhat downward trend for the temporary resident routes. Again, things have changed slightly. For the temporary resident routes, it wasn't this downward, but unfortunately, that's where we are right now. So between now and 2028, Canada is looking to bring in somewhere between 360 and 390. These values differ from year to year. I think for this year, it's about 360 to, I think, 370 or 380,000. So you can be one of these, or you can plan. If where you're at right now, you're not strategically positioned, you can try to see, can I be one of these 360 to 390, maybe in 2027 or 2028? So again, maybe in the past year, you heard a lot of people coming into Canada to study. There's a downward trend in the number of temporary residents or admissions Canada is bringing in right now. I want to state right from the onset that there's a lot of greater emphasis given to those who can speak French, can write, read, or learn French. So how do you position yourself to come to Canada? It begins with your profile, not a program. So oftentimes people would approach me and say, I want to come in through the express entry route, excuse me, or I want to come in to study. Now, I want to come into work. The question is, it's not about the program, it's about your profile. Who are you as an individual? Because that is what makes you eligible to be able to come in through one of these routes. So oftentimes when I sit with people, I try to know them as an individual. And then based on your profile, we can map it to specific routes you might be eligible for. So when we're talking about your profile, what do we mean? Your age, your education status. What's your level of education? Do you have a BSc or do you have up to PhD? What's your language proficiency level? How well would you do if you went to write the language proficiency exams, in terms of reading, writing, speaking, and listening? And then what's your occupation? Because, yeah, Canada is looking for skilled individuals, but there are some occupations that are really juicy to Canada. And then what's your work experience? How many years have you worked with your certificate? What's your marital status? It's possible sometimes your marital status could impact your ability to come to Canada. And then how much money do you have? And if you're married, definitely we can now talk about your spouse's profile. I mentioned French. How much of French do you know? And then what are your Canadian connections? Do you have siblings in Canada? Things like that. Other types of Canadian connections could mean, have you studied here in Canada? Have you worked here in Canada? And then also, what are your long-term goals? So when you look at these things I've said on my screen, you would see there is a candidate A who is like 27 years old. They have a BSc, they have 3 years experience, single, has good knowledge of English. And then you have the candidate who is 41 years old, has PhD, right? And experience 15 years, married language. So when you look at these two type of individuals, what would work for candidate A may not necessarily work for candidate B because candidate B has better education, has more years of work experience and things like that. So that's basically if we're also going through the point-based selection system. So speaking of permanent residency, maybe most of you are familiar with the express entry route. We also have what we call the provincial nomination.
Yes.
Okay. Currently, we have the regional and community programs, we have family sponsorship, and there are a lot more other economic routes, a lot more, a lot more, a lot more. Now, temporary residency, basically what we want to look at, study, work, and then visits. So just to clear out a bit of misconception, express entry itself is not an immigration program, it's just a selection system. So individuals who go through express entry are able to get selected to come to Canada as permanent residents. Under the express entry route, that's big umbrella, we have what we call the Federal Skilled Worker Program, we have the Canadian Experience Class, and we also have what we call the Federal Skilled Trades Program. Okay. Now, to be able to become eligible for either of these three programs, you have to get into what we call that express entry pool. And then based on the selection criteria, which I already made reference to 2 slides before, you can then see where you stand and if you stand a chance to be selected to come to Canada as a permanent resident. It's highly competitive in the pool because you have people of different ages, people of different educational qualification, and people with varying work experience. The higher the work experience, 3 years being the maximum number of years you should have worked to be able to get the best points for working. And then you also have people who have good connections to Canada. So that's why it's highly competitive in that pool. It's highly competitive. Now, if you're able to survive that competition, what happens is you become invited to apply to Canada as a permanent resident. So when you get into that pool, you are allotted a score based on those criteria in your profile. We call it a comprehensive ranking system score, a CRS score. And then very recently now, you can get selected based on category. So I would say back in the day, anybody could be in the pool, regardless what their education was, regardless, yeah, regardless what their work experience was or is, they could get invited to apply to Canada. But because I know most of the people I'm speaking with right now are not in Canada, I would say what you should be concerned majorly about right now is what we call the category-based selection. Because for the past 2 years thereabouts, Canada has focused primarily on the category-based selection. I'm going to delve a bit more into that so you know how you can position yourself to come to Canada through the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which you would most likely be eligible for as we speak. I'm not going to talk too much about the Canadian Experience class, but I will tell you what you can do to become eligible for that class. And then the Federal Skill Trades Program, I am not going to talk about that at all because most people who are foreign nationals, most people who are outside of Canada, I should say, would not be eligible for the Federal Skilled Trades Program. So, eligibility factors, age, okay? The older you are, the more competitive and difficult it becomes for you to have a good CRS score. I've explained what the CRS score is. Now, the higher education you have, the better for you. The higher proficiency level you have in English and or French, the better for you. If you have Canadian experience, good for you. But if you're outside Canada, I guess you don't have that. Foreign work experience, if you have up to at least 3 years of work experience, good for you. If you have anything above three, you're good. If you have less than three, you're not going to be able to maximize your potential. So you want to work towards that point where you have up to 3 years work experience. And then we talk about the spousal factors. So if you have a spouse who is also educated, they have a BSc, MSc, or PhD, good for you. And they can also take the language score, the language test, good for you because then they can elevate your chances and increase your points in the CRS system. Now, we also talk about provincial nomination. It used to be a huge thing back in the day, but not as much as it used to be. But I would say that also everything I'm saying rather today, don't take it as absolute because Canada has a very rapidly evolving immigration landscape. So tomorrow we could wake up in the morning and hear that provincial nomination will be back and fully back, right? So my advice to everyone listening to me would be to say whatever you want to do, whatever you find out there right now, make do with it and do it quickly because things change rapidly. You just want to position yourself to and be ready for any opportunities that come your way. Transferability factor simply means when I have a good work experience and I have a good language ability, some factors will be transferred. And so I can get more points. That makes me better eligible to be invited to apply to Canada as a permanent resident. So you can see at the lower part here, it says limited foreign work experience. Anything below 3 years is not good. If your language skills are not top notch, it's not good. So I'll just speak briefly about the language skills. Usually people would write what we call the IELTS or the CELPIP. So if you're looking to write any of these, you want to target scores that are 8 and above. So reading, you want to have at least a 8.59, writing, the same thing, listening, the same thing, and speaking, the same thing. If your scores will be weak at all, just make sure that for your writing, for instance, you don't have below a 7.5. For all the other competency levels, you want to make sure that you have a 8 and above. And this is regardless of what your age is, whether you're in your 20s or whether you're in your 30s or in your 40s, you even need it more. You want to make sure you're having 8.5 and up to 9. And that's what helps you to really maximize your potential in the pool because at the end of the day, your language is not going to be taken just as a standalone entity. You get more points if you have good language scores. You get more points for your foreign work experience. You get more points for your education. That's where we talk about the transferability factors. Okay. Now, as you grow older, you lose points based on your age. Okay. Canada tries to bring in people who, or loves to bring in people who are a bit younger. Does it mean hope is lost for those who are older? No. I'll get into what you can do as an older person to still make use of what the system has to offer to be able to fulfill your dreams of coming to Canada. Now, today we're in 2026. What does the express entry look like? I mentioned that currently Canada is focusing on what we call the category-based selection target. Now, on my screen here, you would see the categories that Canada has been focusing on in the past months. Okay, when I say months, I'm even talking about 12 months, 15 months, 24 months. Top of the list is the French language proficiency, followed by the healthcare and social services. And then you have all the other ones. I would tell you that out of all the other ones, most of them within the past 12 months, you would find some of them that have not even appeared at all in the invitation rounds of invitation to apply to Canada. So, in case you don't know, there is something called the rounds of invitation to apply. What Canada would do is every once in a while, once in 2 weeks, they would send out invitations to apply to individuals who want to come to Canada. So they go into that express entry pool and look out for people whose profile they are interested in. And then they put a benchmark to the lowest score and they send out an invitation to apply to those people. Okay. So very often within the past 12 months and a bit beyond, a lot of people with language, if French language proficiency, have been asked to apply to Canada. Healthcare and social services, a lot of people with work experience in that sector have also been invited to apply to Canada. STEM, maybe you see that's sparingly within the past 24 months. The same thing with trades, transportation, and all of that. Now you would see this category of physicians with Canadian work experience. Unfortunately, that's for those who are already here in Canada. The same thing with senior managers. Those are for those who are here in Canada. And skilled military recruits, definitely, it's also for those who are here in Canada. I'm going to delve more into the French language proficiency right now before I go into the next screen. What does it mean to be able to come to Canada through the French language proficiency? It's like you saying French is my first language. In Nigeria, most of us, English is our first language. We go to school, we understand English, we undergo our education in English. But Canada has two languages, two official languages, French and English. And so you can choose to say English is my first language or French is my first language, whichever one you like. So what Canada is doing currently is individuals who decide to say or claim French as their first language. And how do you claim that? It's not just by saying French is my first language. It's by going to take the TEF or TCF exam and doing really well in your reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Doing really well, that way you get a lot of points. The beautiful thing is because there are a lot more English speakers compared to French speakers, um, it's such that with the French language proficiency category, the CRS score benchmark is usually low. So just to put things into perspective, currently CRS score cutoff points would be somewhere around, say, 500 and above. Yeah, 500 and above. But when it comes to the French language round, you would see numbers 400, the early 400s up to the mid 400s and thereabouts, right? So chances are, if maybe you can come in through the English language routes because maybe you're older or you're competing with people who have higher scores, greater scores, they have the I 500s and whatever. Chances are, if you can make French your first language by passing the exams, you would qualify for the French language proficiency round. Okay, so
Thank you, Ruth. I'm just a breather, and for you to also hold your breath and catch. So
sure.
welcome to everybody who's joining us, and this is our LEF program fortnightly. And tonight we have Ruth as a guest speaking to us on a Canada pathway. She's gone depth and introduce the topic on the different pathways. I'm sure you're getting the best. Please pay attention, take notes. You have the chance to ask questions subsequently, so don't leave in between while we are going on. It's important that you stay true to the end. You have a lot to gain. So you can go on, Ruth.
Thank you. Yes. So again, the French language proficiency. I'm just going to still say one or two things about it. A lot of people have said, I can't learn French. I can come into Canada. I can't sit down to learn French. But I would say I've seen a lot of people who would ordinarily not qualify for any of the other routes, maybe the healthcare, the STEM, the trades, because of age and other factors, maybe even education, but because they were able to subject themselves to study and learn French and then going for the exams, maybe once or multiple times, they've been able to come into Canada through the French route. And when you come into Canada, it doesn't mean you have to continue speaking French. Like you can live anywhere, do anything you like, because now you're a permanent resident in Canada. Now, I would speak about the healthcare category as well. Whenever Canada does decide to explore the healthcare category, which they do once in a while, you have people who are like nurses, physicians, dentists, pharmacists, and people like that who are able to come into Canada. I should also start sound a note of caution at this point to say, what I've seen in the past months is the fact that people who are able to explore the healthcare route, people who are usually younger, say in their late 20s, and they already have like at least 3 years of work experience. Now, this makes them eligible. They have good points or a good score in the express entry pool. As such, they're able to come in, or whatever the cutoff is, they have an advantage in that regard. Um, all the other routes, if you're in STEM, for instance, I wouldn't say you should rely on it so much because there are a lot more people here in Canada in STEM as well. You will be competing with, and chances are they probably have a higher score than you do. And it's going to be the same with all the other routes, trades, transport, agriculture, and the rest. And you can see that the others are those with Canadian work experience. So this is just showing you what it's going to look like with a French language opportunity within the next 3 years. 9% are coming in through French 2026, and it's going to rise to about 10.5% in 2028. So that's just to tell you that there is still an opportunity for you if you still want to come in through the French language route, right? It's not, doesn't look like it's going to end today. It doesn't look like it's going to end in 2027. It might as well, based on what we have, carry into 2028. And who knows, it might go well into 2029. But again, the way the system of government works here in Canada, it's quite different from the way it works in Nigeria, for instance. They could call an election at any time. And when that happens, what happens is, or for instance, the government in power might decide to change the immigration minister. If they do, and if he has an entirely different concept from what the person in authority has currently, they could kind of try to rejuggle and change things a little bit here and there. But again, this trajectory you see, for the most part, they will try not to deviate from it till 2028. But things could also be dicey to an extent. So how about you take on French, not as a hobby, but as your means to come into Canada if that's really what you desire to do, to come to Canada. So just to talk about the provincial nomination programs, really quickly, Canada has a lot of provinces, and usually most of its provinces, because the way immigration is handled in Canada, it's handled both provincially, and then at the end of the day, the federal body has the how do I say it now? The entire authority to decide who the provinces bring in. But to an extent, the provinces can decide they want a certain set of individuals, they want a certain individuals in a certain occupation to come to their province. So because of that, the federal government allows people, or rather allows provinces, to target and attract the individuals they need. So it's something worth considering. One can look into provinces. I should just say that that opportunity to look into provinces from outside Canada is not as easy as it used to be. Back in the day, you could just be in the pool, and then a province could come and select you to apply, submit what we call an expression of interest, and then you're nominated, and then you can apply to them. If they like you, they give you the nomination, you take to the federal to then apply for permanent residence. Okay. That being said, I usually tell people that never say never, because again, tomorrow, one of the provinces could wake up and decide they want to open up a new stream. So how about you just position yourself, get into the express entry pool, because that's where most of those provinces also pick people they want to pick, and just make yourself eligible or situate yourself in such a way that should the opportunity arise, then you can make use of it to come to Canada. Now, let's talk about the temporary residence opportunities. I want to state right from the outset that coming into Canada temporarily does not translate into permanent residence. So maybe you come to work or you come to study, it does not mean you will become a permanent resident. A lot of temporary residents do have to go back home after coming here to Canada, because again, it is temporary residence. It's not permanent residence. Also, getting a job offer does not equate getting a work permit. You could get a job and then IRCC does not give you a work permit, or getting an admission does not equate getting a study permit, and those do not translate into permanent residence. That being said, oftentimes when we look at your profile as an individual, then we can tell you some things to do that could increase your chances of coming into Canada as a permanent resident. So, for instance, I sit with you, I see that based on your profile, you can't come in directly as a permanent resident. Then I could advise you to say, hey, let's do XYZ. Okay, for instance, maybe you could come in to study a certain type of program for a certain length of time. And then, because of the opportunities that would afford you when you're done, you might be able to, or rather, it predisposes you to getting permanent residence more easily. So you can see on my screen, when you come to Canada to study, for instance, you would still might still need to get into the express entry pool at the end of the day. But now you have more factors that increases your chances. For instance, you say, yes, I studied in Canada already. IRCC is going to give you more points in the express entry pool due to the comprehensive ranking system. And then you say, hey, I've worked in Canada for 1 year or 2 years, maybe by your postgraduate through your postgraduate work permits, it increases your chances. You say, now I've worked in Canada for 1 year. So that makes you to start becoming eligible for what we call the Canadian experience class, right? So all of those would give credence to your points in the express entry pool. Again, increasing your chances, not directly translating to PR. That is why if you're considering temporary residence as a way to elevate your chances for permanent residence, you want to make sure that you strategically plan it properly from the very beginning, right? You put all the necessary factors into place. You consider age, you consider province of study, you consider where you want to go to study and work, because to a very large extent, I just explained that different provinces have different programs, okay, where you can through which they bring in people to start living in those provinces once they get their PR, permanent residence, and then, it helps those provinces grow economically. So based on that, if somebody's coming to Canada to study, you don't just say, I found this school. I think I like this school, or I found this course, and they are willing to give me admission. It's a lot more than that. The questions are, where is that province at? What course are you actually going to do? Is it a course that will give you postgraduate work permit at the end of the day? if it does give you postgraduate work permit, is it going to your occupation at the end of the day, is it going to make you eligible for PR easily? Or what chances or what opportunities do you have in that province? There are some provinces that have a lot more opportunities than some other provinces. So it's an holistic view. It's not just I got admission or I got a job offer and then I carry my bag, I'm going. You want to think of what happens after that. Because unfortunately, there are people who are here in Canada, they've paid a whole lot of money to come here to study. Unfortunately, they have to go back home. Some are still kind of, it's still a tussle with the government to say, hey, go back home. I'm not going back home and all of that. So you want to make sure that you're carefully researching, doing your due diligence before you embark on a temporary residential route. Um, and you can see there are some red flags here. For instance, someone tells you this course is going to guarantee PR. Nothing like that actually happens, but it can make you more eligible, right? Or this program makes little sense for your professional progression, or your entire strategy depends purely on PR and all of that. So those are just some things to watch out for. So human capital optimization, I talked about the fact that your spouse and your educational degree can also improve your chances for coming to Canada. So you can see two profiles here, or rather, yeah, two profiles here. So we have a husband, 43, PhD holder, is in senior management, and his language skill is not too strong. And then we have the wife, she's 28, she has BSc, and she's in targeted occupation, and she has an excellent language. So you want to see who should be the principal applicant, right? So Profile 2 is going to yield a better score because of her age. She's 28, right? So this is where we now want to consider, okay, we can make the wife the principal applicant and then maybe put the husband underneath as the dependent, right? And then if the wife had French, for instance, she had excellent French language, I want to tell you, I'm most likely sure that this couple will be on their way to Canada very soon, despite the fact that the husband has senior management um position. He has a PhD, which ordinarily, if we were to be like a 30-year-old or a 32-year-old, and then if he had good French ability too, that kind of person would have an excellent profile. So I hope, with these explanations I'm making, you're just trying to get the gist of how it looks like. So let's just look at how age also changes the strategy, okay? Even though it doesn't automatically eliminate the opportunity. So between 22 years and 29 years of age, you want to focus on your education. By focusing on your education, if you have a master's, that is great. If you have a PhD, that's wonderful. You want to focus on your language skills. I've mentioned what you should be considering as the benchmark for those, and then gaining skilled experience. 3 years is awesome, is great. So that helps you to build an, an optimal express entry profile. If you've written your language exams once and you're not getting the best, go into the express entry pool, go back to rewrite the exam. There is no limit to the number of times you can rewrite it to make sure that you're getting the optimal result. And that's for both the English language and for the French language. If you're between age 30 and 35, please definitely target the French language acquisition because that's going to increase your chances a lot. English may not give you the best. Okay. If you're still between 22 and 29 years, and you're in one of those occupations I talked about are being targeted, healthcare, for instance, your chances are high. But when you're moving to 30, 35, your chances may be a bit reduced. So you may want to consider the French language. Now, 36 to 40, it's hard to do it without French. I'm speaking of today, things may change tomorrow. So how about you now start looking at what provinces can I target? What provinces are willing to invite people from outside Canada? Because many of those provinces also just rely on people who are in Canada already. Do you have a spouse? How can you optimize their own profile as well in terms of their language and evaluating their educational credentials? And then 40 and 45 plus, people like that need to rely a lot on French, on PNPs, and getting into in-demand occupations here in Canada. Here in Canada, definitely. to a very large extent. Of course, I've seen people who lately came into Canada 2 years ago at the age of 39, 40, who came in solely because they had good French scores and they had up to masters and of course up to 3 years work experience. So what are the financial realities? Because it's not enough to just have the profile I've talked about. There are huge financial implications to come to Canada. And while you're planning on, I want to situate myself in terms of language, in terms of work experience, and all of that. You also want to make sure that you're ready financially because I've seen a lot of people, they got that opportunity, they were invited to apply to for permanent residence, but because they were not financially equipped, they lost the opportunity. So there's what we call the proof of funds. Canada needs to show if you're coming as an individual or coming with family that you can afford to come to Canada and live for about 6 months, without having to work. If you did not get a job, you would still be okay. When you go on the Government of Canada website as well, you would see how much you need to show. And there are requirements like it should not be borrowed funds. You should claim that these are the funds you've acquired as an individual or as a family. You show by means of bank accounts and things of that nature. So red flags, if someone guarantees you a visa, you definitely want to make sure that that's you're not going with it. An agent told you they are definitely going to get you a visa or a PR, maybe it's work or study. Very careful. A lot of people call me and say, "Can I get a job?" or "I got a job offer." Uh, you know, when people tell me they got a job offer, I just take it with a pinch of salt because the percentage of people who actually comes Canada through job offers is really, 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 really low. And then another thing to be mindful of, and I would state this because I know for people maybe going to the UK, it works a lot, using bank statements from microfinance banks or from some other financial institutions might work, but with Canada, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you can come to Canada by arranging proof of funds with a financial institution. This money has to actually be seated in your own account. Canada has ways of verifying that money is in your own account through the back end. And I've also had people who came to meet me because they got what we call procedural fairness letter. They had actually used fake bank letters, money that was not theirs. And unfortunately, they jeopardized their chances of coming to Canada because that's called misrepresentation, and you get banned for, I think that's 5 years. You would not be able to submit any application to come to Canada. If you wanted to come, not PR, maybe through temporary residence as well, because for funds is really, really big. Might even be bigger than if you were coming through the permanent resident route. And definitely talking about proof of funds, oh, I wanted to say something there. Definitely you need to pay for your application fees. I think that was what I wanted to say. Yeah, I'm rounding up now. So what would be your 30-day strategic blueprint to start working towards coming to Canada? First, you need to get your educational credential assessment, right? If you have a BSc, MSc, or PhD, we have some organizations that would assess your credentials to really see if it matches with the Canadian equivalent. So you say, hey, I studied engineering at whatever university. Canada wants to see, based on Canadian standards, are you actually an engineer? Then you need to identify what we'll call your NOC, National Occupation Code. Okay, the National Occupation Code is to say, I'm just going to speak a bit about this, is to say, when you say I'm a teacher, are you actually qualified to be a teacher? Did you go to school to study to become a teacher? So I know in Nigeria, I could have studied to become an engineer and still be allowed to teach. But Canada doesn't view teaching that way. You need to have the qualification of a teacher to be able to teach. So when you're identifying your NOC, you want to make sure that the duties you say you're performing, you're both qualified to do it. And that's exactly what you're doing. And then, of course, take a language test. You can calculate your CRS score before you even get into the pool itself. and check to see if your occupation is one of the targeted occupation. On the IRCC website, where you talked about a category-based occupation, there are links to check the occupations that are targeted in each of the categories. And then you want to research which of the provinces you could be eligible for. And here, make a serious decision about learning French. Develop a concrete plan A, B, C. If PR doesn't work directly, could I go in through TR, and what could be my chances? So the best time to understand your immigration options is before you urgently need one. And I think for anyone wanting to come to Canada, today is actually the start. You should actually start today because nothing is guaranteed for tomorrow. That's the end of the presentation. If we have questions, I will be open to taking questions from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Olashukwa, you've given a very thorough and in-depth session on immigration pathways to Canada, the permanent residency pathway, and then the temporary visa pathway, study visa, and other things. You've given a lot of details about that. I hope we were able to catch up with the discussion with the lecture as much as she went through it. And if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat box. You have a chance to speak with somebody who is licensed to give you all the details you need to know about this immigration pathway, not some online blogs or some agents who are there to rip you off. Even before they speak anything to you, they are ready to get your money. So please drop your question. Yeah. So I have questions also, and I think I'll begin with mine so that while others drop theirs, it should be too common. You mentioned the emphasis on French and said there's a category-based selection that has a way of helping or boosting the chances of people coming along. But I'm thinking you actually dealt with virtually every aspect I had already had questions on. I'm thinking you mentioned already, just to broad stress, if it's difficult to fall into one of these categories, and then the chances are more like available when you are within Canada than when you are outside Canada. For example, I've forgotten that particular one, the trade aspect and the other ones. Could it be that somebody just steps into Canada for the sake of application and return back to, I don't know how that sounds. I'm thinking, and I'm thinking out loud. I know that is one.
Okay.
Then the other aspect, um, are there some careers that are on the priority list apart from the healthcare? Because I know that the healthcare is more like a priority almost everywhere. And there was a time I was hearing about early years education, people in the early years education. I was hearing also about mental health support, caregivers, things like that. So I don't know, you didn't mention about that. So can you just talk about that?
Okay, thank you. So speaking about stepping into Canada, and I know you're saying this with reference to when I mentioned the trades occupation. So it's not about literally just physically stepping into Canada. Now, with respect to the trades, Canada has a special way the people can become trade. How do I say this? So Canada has a specialized set of training for people who want to work as in the trade sector. So trade sector, for instance, as a plumber, there is no specialized training to work as a plumber in Nigeria. But here in Canada, I can't just go over to my sink and then start playing with the faucets and all of that. No. You'll be surprised to know that someone who can work on the sink faucets in the kitchen may not be able to do the same in your bathroom because they don't have the qualification to do that. Okay. To become an electrician in Canada, if you're an electrician in Nigeria, you can't just come to Canada tomorrow and even as a PR and be able to work as an electrician. You have to go through their own training. It's a process. So if someone says they are a tradesperson, I'm a mechanic, I'm a plumber. I come to Canada tomorrow as a visitor. Does that make me eligible for the trades occupation category? No, it doesn't make you eligible. You must have gone through the process. In fact, each province has their own process. So you must have gone through the province you're in, become certified. I think it's called Red Seal, have that certification that you're a Red Seal. Because by the time you start creating an express entry profile, they are going to ask you, do you have a certificate, a provincial, it's whatever name it's called. And then as a tradesperson, and then when you say yes, that's naturally qualifies you for the federal skilled trades program. But once you say no, that means you don't have that certificate to operate as a tradesperson in that province, then you're not eligible. So again, coming to Canada, you need to, it's not just you're coming into Canada as a visitor and then you become eligible. All the Canadian experience classes I mentioned, maybe as a physician, as a senior manager, all of that, it's because you came into Canada, you already studied, and then maybe you already worked. Because when you're also filling the express entry pool questions, it has all of those questions, and then it's going to naturally kind of um put you in the right category you belong to. So I hope that answers that question. Now, priority career list. Again, the best place you can get information all the time is not from bloggers, is not on YouTube. It's by going on the IRCC web page. Every time Canada has something to a new update, there will always be an announcement. There will always be an update on the IRCC website. Okay, so um in-demand occupation or targeted occupation changes from time to time. And like you rightly mentioned, I think some 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a lot of healthcare workers, I wouldn't say healthcare workers, support workers, childcare workers, people in that category were able to come into Canada because they were able to come in because probably they got jobs with employers, maybe family employers, and then Canada was focusing on that route. I think they did that for like 2 to 3 years, and then now it stopped. If you want to come in as a childcare worker, you must have already been in Canada as a childcare worker. So right now, they're not bringing in foreign nationals from outside to come into Canada as childcare workers. And there was one time they were bringing in those in the agricultural sector, and all of a sudden everybody said they were farmers, you know. But right now, Canada is not doing it. Um, the occupations that are in target right now are those in the list I showed you, but it's further broken down. And when you go on the Government of Canada website, you will be able to see the particular occupations I talked about. Again, physicians is one of those, and a few of the other healthcare occupations are one of those that are really targeted these days
Thank
whenever
you.
they want to bring in people from outside. Yeah.
So I think it's not even the point for us to squeeze ourselves into a certain career just for the sake of immigration too. So we just need to look for where we naturally align to. Somebody is asking a question, and then in the chat box it says 29 HND civil engineering who wants to take a loan to come for MSc computer science or artificial intelligence. I don't know what you have to say about that. He has 3 years
Yeah.
experience in construction already.
So unfortunately, on this call, I would not be able to dissect individual profiles because a lot goes into that. So, for instance, you said you're 29, you have HND in civil engineering since 2020, 3 years experience in construction. Will you be eligible through express entry? I can't say that right now because I can't go and start putting in your scores. So what you can do for yourself is just do a simple Google search CRS Canada or CRS calculator. It brings it out. Now you can go in and put in this information yourself. It's going to ask you simple questions. What's your age? How old are you? Do you have foreign educational certificates? Just answer those questions. Once you're done answering those questions, it's going to calculate and give you what your score is. So based on that score, you can now go in to check what are the recent trends, what are the recent scores, for those who have been able to apply. So now when you talk about, getting a loan, again, we're considering a whole lot of factors. You're coming to study. How many years of study would this be? When you're done studying, how many years of work experience would you be eligible for? And then we're looking at that. How would you be at that point in time? What provinces we know have opportunities available for people who are in the construction industry? So tying all of that together, we're now I'm going to try to see what your chances would be maybe in the next 2, 3 years. So unfortunately, we can't do all of that just within this call. We can't start dissecting an individual person's
Thank
opportunity.
you
Yeah.
for that. So please let's go up to Google and check up the CRS calculator. You'd probably come up with your own profile already, having an idea of where you stand before any other person can give you update information. I want to ask the PMP, the provincial nomination, do applicants tied to a certain province? Then follow up to that. I hear, please confirm that in the northern region, I mean, close to the coldest parts, the coldest of the coldest parts, and not Canada is cold, there are more opportunities there in those provinces. So, can you say something to that?
So no, applicants are not tied to a certain province. If you don't go through the provincial nomination program, when you land in Canada, you can go anywhere, live anywhere. But if you're nominated, what nomination does is it gives you additional 600 points. So that means you're committing yourself to the province that gave you those 600 points to say, hey, when I come to Canada, I will live in your province. So you need to live there for a certain number of years, after which you'll be free to go to any other province you want to go to. Your other question, if there are better opportunities in the Atlantic provinces. So sometimes there could be better opportunities in the Atlantic provinces. I say that especially for people who, again, because these territories, they have the ability, and provinces, of course, they have the ability to do their own specific immigration programs. The government of Canada allows them to do that. Okay. So because of that, you even realize sometimes people come in here to study. Maybe they study in, say, somewhere like Ontario, which most people like to go to, but I tell most people it doesn't give you the best opportunities sometimes. So you realize you find people having studied in a place like Ontario, because now they look like a place, for instance, Newfoundland is targeting a certain occupation and they happen to be in that occupation. And maybe Newfoundland is saying something like, if you're in this occupation, we're currently running a program. If you work there for 6 months, we would give you a nomination to apply for PR, right? So maybe someone in the healthcare industry. I'll tell you that someone, for instance, I know she studied in Ontario, but she's in healthcare and she was able to get a job. I specifically told her, hey, get a job in one of the Atlantic provinces and go there. And she did that because that province has that specific pathway that once you work here as an healthcare provider, after 6 months, we are going to you would apply and they will give you a sponsorship, something of that nature that makes you now eligible to apply for maybe their own non-express entry route, PR, or the bigger um, permanent residential through the federal system. So may not be eligible for those who are outside Canada. Okay. Um, Again, I say that with a pinch of salt because I also know that nurses who are outside Canada can get opportunities in many of the Atlantic region. It's not as difficult. If you can go through your exams and you can get a job, then you can go and start working in those provinces. And if you start working in those provinces, your chances of getting a PR might be increased. Yeah, I hope that
Thank you.
answers that
But
question.
yeah, but I'm not minding the challenges of the environment and the,
No, no, no,
the
there are no
climate.
challenges. No, no, there are no
Uh,
challenges there.
all
No,
right.
no.
Yeah. Two
I
questions
mean,
from the chat.
everywhere is, sorry, just to say everywhere is livable in Canada. If you may not find as many people there, it could be cold, but you can survive it. And you don't have to live there for the rest of your life. So don't let people tell you it's too cold. Yeah, it's so cold in Alberta to sometimes it gets to -40. We
Ah, ah,
survive, we are okay. Okay. So
amazing.
and it's really hot now these days too. It's getting to +36 and the likes. But we're okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, two questions I want to put as one. I know you can't give details, but just consider this profile. Husband, a wife is an health educator, and the husband is a certified plumber. Just on a broad set sense, what do you think their profiles? How does it stand in boosting their entry?
So she has admission to study health education in Canada. I'm not just going to take the admission with a pinch of salt. What was she doing before? Okay. Um, what education did she have before? And what is her work experience? Because remember that it's just one step to get admission. Getting admission is not difficult. Anybody can get admission. The school would give you admission. Bigger question is, would you get a study permit? Because the process of getting a study permit goes way beyond getting admission or even having the funds. Having the funds very important. Being able to pay your school fees very important. But you need to tie this health education into your purpose of coming to Canada, which to a very large extent, you need to tie it to your past as well. It must be logical because someone is going to sit at your application. You're not going to be in front of the visa officer. So you need to be able to explain why you want to come and study health education to this visa officer in writing. So it's a whole package that requires huge common sense. Yeah. So if you're a plumber, good. Again, when you come into Canada, you may not be able to work as a plumber right away, right? Um, again, if your wife gets the admission to study health education, depending on the type of level of education she's coming to study, you may not be able to come in with her to work. You may just be able to come in at best as a visitor. So it's a whole lot. Why is she coming in? What was she doing before? Now that she's coming in, what level of education is she coming into? That's what's going to determine how you come in as well, either as a visitor or with a spousal open work permits.
All right. I want to think that she's coming as a postgraduate, probably a master's or something like postgraduate
Postgraduates,
diploma.
you have postgraduate diploma, you have postgraduate certificates. That's not going to give your spouse opportunities to work. It has to be through master's or PhD.
One more question too, just in the same sense, since you've talked about the category of French and how French can boost, well, let me use the language. French can be the game changer. Somebody now has a BSc in French and very fluent. Is that all the person needs? After all, French is already on the table.
So yeah, French is on the table. Hopefully they can write their exams and pass. But it's not just do they have work experience, right? Because if it's only 0 years of work experience you have, remember the profile for the express entry pool: age, education, work experience, language proficiency. So just French is just one of it. It satisfies the language proficiency. But if you have just 1 year of work experience, your scores will be low. If you have up to 3 years, you would get the highest point for scores, right? Um, for education, BSc may be a bit low, but hopefully, because now you don't need two high scores since you're coming in through French, that might be good for you, depending on what your age is. Are you 29 or are you 41? I don't know if that answers your question. So I would definitely tell this person, Google CRS calculator, go in and put in your profile, answer the questions regarding your work experience. Answer all of those questions, and then you will be able to know where you stand regarding, yeah, your chances to come into Canada.
Thank you. So it's a whole lot. It's not just one point out of many. It's a lot of different points all coming together to align and help your profile. Someone is asking a question about, I don't know, can you break down the cost implications for cost implication? I think she did that already. Is there a separate cost for PR application and PNP? Will they have to pay differently?
Yeah, if a province nominates you to apply to their province, you will definitely pay whatever their processing fees are. Yeah, it will depend on what province you're going to. They all have different fees. If at the end of the day you submit your documents, they look through everything, they are satisfied that what you claimed, you actually have it, then they issue you the nomination. You will then take the nomination and apply to Canada. That's to the federal, and then you would pay the federal fees as well.
I've just been
Does
informed
that
that someone is raising the hand up.
okay?
Can you go ahead?
Thank you very much. A very good evening to everyone. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ruth Olashupo, for the very expository section tonight. Speaking from the UK tonight, there's what they call the transnational education, which is fast becoming a thing in the UK. I would like to ask, for the benefit of those possibly in Nigeria, if they can, undergo a course in Canada transnationally, right? That's why they're in Nigeria. They undergo a course from a college or university or an institution in Canada, and they are issued a Canadian certificate. Can they leverage on that to apply for immigration to Canada? Likewise, can those in Nigeria apply for remote jobs, right, in Canada and gain work experience from such remote jobs? Will it count for them when applying for Canadian immigration? Thank you very much.
Thanks for your question. So, to the best of my knowledge, looks like this is the first time I'll be hearing that term, transnational education. To the best of my knowledge, and I've seen people who previously before now they did a course, they did one short-term course or the other, and they had Canadian certificate, right? What I know people could sometimes do is this, get an admission. Okay, yeah. So I remember during COVID, right? People got admission to study in Canada. And then the government put it out that for you to be able to say that you had indeed studied in Canada and be able to get points for Canadian study, you must have been present here for a certain amount of time. So to a very large extent, Canada considers being physically present here in Canada to be able to claim either Canadian work experience or Canadian study. Now I wanted to say something. Um, Canadian study. Yeah, I wanted to say something with respect to the study because also, for people who study, we have what we call the postgraduate work permit. All of that usually requires physical presence in Canada. There must have been a minimal amount of time or a minimum amount of hours you must have spent here in Canada. Very recently, I remember now there's this lady, she got admission to come in here to study, and our thinking was she was going to be able to stay some months here and go back to Nigeria to study for some months, while still keeping her job and all of that. It was quickly she realized that at the end of the day, what was going to come out of it in terms of the chances thereafter were going to be so, so limited. So she had to quickly make a switch to come and be here permanently to study. So, to the best part of what I know, based on what I know, and I could still do some more research about this. But to the best part of what I know, you do need to be here physically studying in Canada to be able to claim Canadian study and Canadian work experience. Yeah, so remote jobs do not count for Canadian experience class.
Thank you. Remote job doesn't count. Rachel, your answer is raised up. Can you have the floor? Rachel, are you there?
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me?
Go on.
Yes.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Rachel. Yeah, Rachel, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ruth. At the moment, I'm running my PhD and I'm trying to get applied. Um, what I want to ask now is for the work experience, if I'm to plug in my PhD, it has to be like 3 years work experience, or it's better I use my master's to plug in. That's the question I have.
Let me help on that question. Maybe, for example, in other countries, your PhD is taken as a work. So the question probably is do you see PhD as a certification or a work experience from the Canadian perspective?
No. As in the education background now. I have
I
okay,
get
just
you.
at the moment.
Rachel, I think I understand your question. Yeah, which is quite different from your interpretation, John. So, Rachel, just to be sure, what you mean is this: you have a PhD. Would it require you have 3 years of work experience post PhD, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there is usually a minimum requirement for your occupation. So I'll take myself as an example. I used to work as a lecturer back in Nigeria. And then when I checked in the express entry pool, it did mention that for lecturers in Canada, the minimum educational criteria has to be a master's. Okay. So I then look at when I had my master's degree, post my master's degree, did I have 3 years of work experience? Yes. So that qualifies me. But if I'm a lecturer in Canada, but I have a BSc, even though, sorry, if I'm a lecturer in Nigeria, but I have a BSc, Nigeria allows me to be a lecturer with my BSc, but Canada says no, you have to be at least a master's holder with to be able to work as a lecturer, okay? Then your BSc is not going to count. So if whatever occupation you're talking about, if you were qualified to do it with your BSc or with your MSc, you're good. You can count the post BSc and post MSc work experience, and then your PhD will just give you additional points for education. Does that answer your question, Rachel?
Very well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're on the final stretch. I noticed there are requests for your contacts. This is Ruth Olashipo. I don't know, maybe your email or something, probably for that. I don't know how you see it, but it's your choice. Then on a final note, the whole process as you've shared, it's obvious it's not a sprint. Can you give an idea of a timeline for somebody who is starting probably this month, August, to when all things being equal could be?
Okay. So it depends on the number of factors. I should state that. And what works for A, sorry, one moment. I was just trying to check up something based on the question the person that had the YP-LEF asked. Okay. Yeah. So, like I was answering the other time, so it says a Canadian certificate earned entirely through remote or distance learning from outside Canada does not qualify for Canadian educational credential bonus points under the express entry. So, to claim for points for Canadian study, more than half of the program typically must be completed while physically present in Canada on a valid study permit. So, I hope that already emphasizes the point I was trying to explain. Back to your question, timelines. Interestingly, Canada is one of those places where um, you can only determine the timeline for what you have to do and when you have to do it and how quickly you want to do it. On the side of Canadian immigration itself, again, the government of Canada tries as much as possible to be transparent. And what I mean by that is if you Google right now and ask IRCC processing times. They are going to give you, they are going to ask you a question, what program are you looking for? What country are you applying from? And they will give you an estimate number of days or weeks or months or years for which your application will be approved. Do they stay true to that? Not always, right? So for instance, you can find an application, they say four weeks, and then it's taken 6 weeks or taking 8 weeks and all of that. So, but from your own standpoint, what can you do? So you can determine when you want to start studying for your IELTS and how soon you want to write it, right? How soon you want to make sure you're well prepared to go into write it. You can set goals for French study for the next 8 months to 12 months. I want to take on French as a second language, and I want to start studying for it. And maybe after 12 months, I want to go in and write the exams with the hope that I do well. You can decide that you want to start today to evaluate your academic credential. So to say, by tomorrow, I'm going to open an account with one of the evaluating bodies like World Educational Services, for instance. I'm going to start processing my what's it called? My transcripts to send to the evaluating body. So I want to do all of that within the next 2 months. Bear in mind too that with Nigerian universities, you can't influence what happens to a very large extent. Your transcript may be delayed somewhere. Someone may need you to pay them some money, some cash to get out the documents you need. So you want to factor all of that into, and then in terms of fund, how soon are you able to raise funds for what you're thinking you want to do? Is it a PR route? Can you raise funds within the next 3 months, within the next 4 months? I'll just use myself as an example. When we decided as a family we wanted to come to Canada, we sat down and then we decided, okay, this is the amount of money we have, this is what we need. And so we decided, hey, you do your West or start your West today, and then you start your West next month, because by next month you have some more funds to do that. And then maybe you take your IELTS next month, and then the results will be out in whatever number of days. And so we gave ourselves some time to do what we could influence. And then we said, okay, funds, we need this much funds within this period of time. So how do we start working on it? And then by the time the West was out, by the time, even though we couldn't control all of that, by the time the language results were out and all of that, we were at a place where we could get into the express entry pool. So we had done everything we needed to do as individuals. And then we just needed to wait for IRCC to invite us to apply for permanent residence. And then now, after the invitation came, the next thing would be to apply for permanent residence. At that point, when you apply, you really cannot determine what happens. Again, IRCC will have an estimated amount of days or weeks or months, which again, they usually update every week. So I have people who are currently planning to come in as visitors. And when we submitted the application, it showed 50, maybe 52 or 57 days. But if you're looking now, it has changed to 64 days. If I look in next week, because it's going to update it next week again, it could have changed to any other number of days. So it's hard to give a timeline. Some people apply for permanent residence. They are on their way to Canada. In my own case, less than 6 months, it was approved. But there were people who applied before me that did not get an approval until way after I got an approval. So a number of factors here and there, but I would say you do what you need to do. And then if you've done your job well, you can just wait for the government of Canada to approve your application, and then you'll be on your way to Canada. I hope that answers your question.
Very well. You didn't leave your contact, I don't know. So the point is do your best and leave the rest. And pray, I believe prayer works too. If you put your mind to it and ask God for mercy and favor, it's going to work very well. Thank you for your time. It's been 1 hour plus, almost 1 hour, 30 minutes of you speaking and sharing from your wealth of experience. And this is first-hand information, not reported speech. Yourself as an example of the process. And that has been very, very massive to us. Thank you for the email. So if you want the Our contact is on the chat box. You could use it for your benefit, for official communications only, please. Thank you very, very much. Inviting our
Sorry,
pastor.
just to
You have
interrupt
something?
you briefly. Yes, I just have a last final word before I hang it, to say that again, there's a whole lot of information on YouTube, bloggers and all of that. Um, Most of us here are professionals. I would say don't rely on those information. You can do it yourself if you want to do it yourself. The government of Canada has a bulk of the information you need. That's not to say there are some things that could be more complex that may require the expert knowledge of professionals like myself. If you do need um, the if you do need to consult with professionals, please don't consult with agents. I know there are a whole lot of agents out there who say they've done it for people, they keep doing it for people. Don't consult with them. You can go as well, Google College of Immigration Consultants. You're going to find a list of individuals who are regulated and certified to assist people, and for which the government of Canada has all of their profile, and they can hold them accountable if they try to be spammy or scam other people. So please look for regulated consultants. You can find their name on the college website, or reach out to lawyers who can assist you. Don't talk to agents, roadside agents who claim to be consultants. Unfortunately, some of them are in Canada as well. Don't talk to them. They may not just, give you a refusal. They may also help you to get a ban, and you don't want to have that happening to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have somebody who's experienced there. So, Pastor Olulade, will give us a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Olasupo Ruth. Mine is just not a vote of thanks. I want to thank you very profusely because, like a professional, you have enlightened people on this job, and that in a way that every one of them have something to take home. On this platform, by the grace of God, we have done for UK and by implications Europe, for people to move, and in droves they are moving. We've done for Germany and in French-speaking areas. And last week, I was invited to grace the occasion where people are moving in droves through the things in which we did on this platform, and people are soon going to move when we introduce them to how they can also improve their language. And I saw amazingly people move from zero, and they move not just to A1, A2, and people are writing C2 exams in few months, and they're on their way to Germany, and this time around completely free, all expenses paid. And today, by the grace of God, Ms. Olasupo has opened the door for people to be enlightened on the way to go to Canada. Of course, by the grace of God, I know that through this knowledge and what she has explained too, I'm soon going to see a family relocate to Canada. These roads are clear, and for those who want to walk, and who are serious about it, the road is very clear, unto us. Let's go out there and do something for our lives. It's not just listening to this things that matters, but let's go ahead and ensure we do something very, very seriously about it. Sorry, we disallowed a lot of people tonight. Please tell them it is not discrimination, but we do not admit people on this platform who actually are anonymous. So if people want to join our platform, they join with their names, and we are ready to be of assistance unto them. And God is helping us to be able to be of assistance. So join our community and be there every 2 weeks for enlightening trainings like this. And we find out that we can move forward. Thank you once again, Ms. Olasupo. We hope that everyone will take advantage. We'll meet up there I'm always excited as I see so many people I know before the year runs out. I'm taking people to the airport because of these kind of things, that are taking place. Don't sleep over the informations because we are doing this free of charge. It's a commission God has given unto us to be of assistance to young people in these generations. Enjoy your day. We all meet at the top. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Pastor. So we have a community, a WhatsApp group where we meet and share and orientate ourselves. This has been going on for years, the YP-LEF, and then you'd want to be a part of it, a community. You can actually find out more and from the community. And you can, this webinar is also live on YouTube. You can check the YouTube channel YP-LEF for the YouTube videos and from other previous episodes we've also had. We're closing with a prayer. Father, in Jesus' name, we appreciate you, King of Glory. We honor you because you are the one who gives us the power to make wealth. You are the one who gives us the power to prosper. Here we have opened the information that would lift up our countrymen and people. I pray, Lord Jesus, that this opportunity would be for our uplifting. It will benefit those who have heard. We will not just hear for hearing's sake. The required action to take, we receive grace for it in Jesus' name. For our guest speaker, we pray that you bless our wisdom more and more, and let us see the benefit of our work also tonight. Thank you, Father, for your answered. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night rest.
Different types of Mommy, this is